Good afternoon. I wanted to update students in the English 162 WA and WB course as far as what we would have left to do for our class. Now, one point that I wanted to tell you, and probably have mentioned this before, but I did really want to mention this again. This booklet is available from Career Services at WCCC, a guide to career planning and the job search. And so you can always pick one of these up in Founders Hall 172. I'm not going to send these out to everyone because I already sent out that red booklet of sample assignments, and they want you as faculty, you can't send out a bunch of handouts throughout the semester like this because it costs a couple dollars for each one. So anyhow, if anybody wants one of these, I can get some copies. You can send me an email, and I could send one to you. But like, for example, this one right here, this one on Victoria Kellerman. She has a degree in early childhood education, but she has her objective, her competencies, which she gained, which in the program, education, honors, clearances, and professional experience. Her professional experience were actually her practicums. If you don't have that, you can list key courses or you can list activities and so on. Volunteerism, work experience, she was a peer tutor, and then reference letter as a recommendation. Same thing too with this one on Renee Livingston, who's a dental hygienist. And you can see hers as far as that goes. So she has objective education, clinical experience, volunteerism, professional experience, work experience, and so on. So anyhow, it just gives you an idea of an education-based resume, which is a resume that focuses on skills that you've learned as as a college student. So anyhow, with these resumes, the reason why I prefer that you post them in College Central is that Career Services looks at them. And, people say, well, this is a technical communication class, and, you would be able to I could give you my thoughts and opinions and recommendations and so on, and definitely could do that. But let me share this example with you, and I think it's a really, really good point. My wife, Vicki, worked for Dr. Kennan in Greensburg for a couple of years, and he was an orthopedic surgeon. And so, of course, one of his big areas was, he did shoulders and rotator cuffs and that sort of thing, especially like athletes, particularly hockey players, but it can be anybody that does repetitive motion. And so he would do those. He would do hips, knee replacements, and lots of others like that. But then when you start to get like into the hand in this particular area, especially like your wrist and so on, there are people that are only specific hand surgeons, and they just do that. And I know Vicki said too that Dr. Kennan preferred not to operate on ankles because he said that's a very specialized area, and there were people that specialize in ankles. And so I mentioned that is in this class, I'd like you to get Career Services to look at your resume and give you some input on it and see if it's acceptable or not, or give some, recommendations on it. So that's something that I really want you to do, but I definitely, at the very least, I want to make sure that you know how to use the portfolio to upload at least 3 documents and then forward it to me. So that's the idea with using collegecentral.com/WCCC. So I just wanted to, mention and note that to you. All right, for Friday, November the 15th, you have to submit your written instructions, and I would encourage you to start working on those today if you haven't already done so. And sometimes what a really good idea is to do is just kind of start to write out on the yellow legal pad or something, what you're going to be doing and where you're going to be headed with your instructions, and then start to work on them. My best recommendation is not to use clipart. Clipart, what good does it do to have like a smiling chef stirring a bowl? You can use Google Images and so on. I know somebody in this class, I believe, is doing cleaning a pool or closing a pool for the winter, and that would be fine. But like last year, I had someone who was replacing a front bumper on a Acura. I think it was a TSX, or I don't remember which one it was, but he had 10 visuals and they didn't match up. They were all these different vehicles, and some of them were better quality and some of them were worse. So, you know, you can use your smartphone, but of course you can use a digital camera, and you can take your own photos, and it gives you better editorial, overview as far as like you can be more specific on your instructions, and you can customize them more, and you can show the steps more accurately and specifically, because it helps a person to see what you're doing and what you're going through. There was a student in this class, him and his father were contractors, and they were plumbers, and they worked for the Home Depot primarily, but they had their own business as well. But in the course of the year, they would replace between 150 and 250 hot water tanks. And so they were pros, and they knew all the tips and shortcuts and so on. But he did his on replacing a gas hot water tank. And so he really did a good job, because he had the laundry room where he was doing it really well lit up, but he also gave like tips and suggestions and so on. I've had students in this class that did as far as throwing a fastball and a curveball effectively in your body position and so on. I know somebody is doing a backflip in cheerleading as far as the body positioning and so on, and it helps you to take more accurate pictures, particularly like if you focus or emphasize a particular area. I was involved in wrestling in junior high, high school, and in college, and my coach would always say, he said, the power for taking down an opponent doesn't come from your upper body as much. It actually comes from your hips and your legs, but the power in wrestling is more in your hips, and that's how you can control opponent and riding them, but also escaping, but also as well is taking them down and following through and so on. And so he would often give us written instructions, more verbal, but that's really what he had stressed as far as that goes. Now, so the best instructions that I get typically are 10 to 15 steps. They usually all have more than 5 visuals. 5 is like the minimum. You want to use more than that, but you're really coaching or helping the person to perform the task. So that's how you need to think of it. And you also need to be able to encourage the person, because naturally, when you do something for the first time, it doesn't turn out that well. I know a couple of years ago I made a pumpkin cheesecake, and a student from this class did, and I tried it. And my first times, the cheesecake had too many cracks, and it was sort of dry, but I experimented and I got better and better at it. But you learn different tips and so on as you you move along. My father-in-law, Joe, he had been a glassmaker his whole career, and when he retired shortly after his wife died, and he didn't know really what to do with his time. And he started to bake, and he started to make like apricot rolls, poppy seed rolls, and nut rolls. And at first, they were so bad that the birds wouldn't even eat them. He threw them out the first time, and they were not good. But he started to perfect them and really do a much better job. I know, the eggs, the butter, he would actually grind up his own nuts. And then as far as the way that he made his dough, but he started to get better and better at them. And then even like sometimes when you do these, especially like apricot rolls, you have to seal them correctly, because otherwise they'll leak out the side. So he really had some good tips and suggestions as far as that goes, and he became much more effective at that. And he would actually tell people, these are how I make my award-winning nut rolls, and really they were exceptional. So anyhow, the written instructions will be due the 15th. For the 22nd, there's a discussion board 6 that you have to do, and you have to do the first posting by the 20th, and then the second posting by the 22nd. There's a letter due for Friday, November 29th, and there is a second letter due for Friday, December the 6th. So, I mean, these letters don't take an abundant amount of time. And then also, too, if you submit the consumer report by the 29th, you get 20 additional points on it. If you submit it by December 6th, you gain an additional 10 points on it. And so I wanted to mention that. And then by Friday, December 13th, you have to post one last discussion board on what you learned from doing the consumer report. And then you also have to do the consumer report by that date. I do want to tell you with the consumer report, it's due on Friday the 13th. I actually have, we have until like about the next week or so to turn in grades, so I can't really wait longer than the 13th, so you do need to get that in. And that would be it. But when you're done with this class, make sure that you have a backup copy of all the documents that you produce, especially the consumer report, the written instructions, and the other, the summary assignment and so on. And then, if you want to continue to use College Central, that's fine. If you want to actually print out, some of your assignments when you go for a second or third interview, that's really, really helpful. I have another suggestion for you that I really highly recommend. When you're a college student, but particularly when you're a professional, keep a folder in your drawer or on your desk or somewhere that every thank you note that you get for volunteering with your church or Relay for Life or United Way or serving on a committee or whatnot, any of those things, keep it. Any awards like Dean's List or recognition from your church, any certificates that you get, any clearances like Act 33 and 34 clearances, that deals like for child, dealing with children and criminal clearances, or if you're like first aid certified, AED like defibrillator, CPR, all those are really, really helpful. If you're a lifeguard, all that is beneficial, but just keep a folder with that information because my title at WCCC is Professor of English, okay? And I started and I was an instructor, and then after 3 years I became assistant professor, and then I had to apply, then I became associate professor, and then finally I went to the rank of professor. But I had to, for the last two, I had to organize a packet and submit it. So all the things that I have done, like the search committees and all the activities that I've done and thank you notes and so on, I kept all those, and so I was able to organize pretty good packets. And so it worked out really well. And probably a couple years ago, I think maybe 2007, I applied for and I won. I was nominated for and I won like the Teaching Excellence Award. And same thing there. I had this information together on my desk and I was able to put it together, and it worked out really, really well. So that's important, And the other thing that I would tell you is, as you go through your career, continue to educate yourself and take other classes. If you can go to get an additional degree, particularly if your employer pays for it, do it. I mean, there's no disadvantage to it. And with WCCC, you'll get twice a year this Con Ed booklet. And look at some of those classes, and they're fantastic. I actually took some last year, online teaching and advanced online teaching. I wanted to see some other ideas. But, I've taken a bunch of credit classes here, but I've taken non-credit classes in computers. Oh, many, many. I've taken one in acting, photography. I took ballroom dancing. But I'm just saying there's a whole array of possibilities that you can get into to develop your skills. I actually took one on, I don't know if it was like Reiki or it was something where, you move your body and you practice stretching and doing some things like that, but it was like rhythmic movement. And so it's good to do other things and expand your skills and meet people and so on. So I think that's really wonderful. So that's really what I wanted to get into. I just wanted to sort of finish off what we have to do for this semester. And if you move ahead and you get these assignments done, we're not going to be doing anything else. We've pretty much covered everything from A to Z. And I would encourage you to keep our textbook. I think it's a pretty good book. I've used it through, I think, about 6 editions now, and I like it because it's 17 chapters and it gives you a more than adequate amount of information. And we were actually looking at the chapter on visuals the other night, which I think is chapter 14 in my night class, and it was great. It's a very good chapter. But the chapter 8 on written instructions is excellent. You should look at that because it reviews in about 10 pages some key points that you want to do for written instructions. So that's it. Thanks.